All right, this is what we got done right here. Let's see how we got here. All right, well, in the beginning video here, again, I'm doing this without narration once. Just I want to see if there's more interested in that sort of thing, or if you guys are more interested in me talking about what I'm doing, and because I get comments from both sides. So anyway, I'll go ahead and oil the bearings. If you notice, they're marked, because what I do before I put them on the crankshaft, I'll put them in the case, make sure they fit. That's one thing you always do. Double check, make sure they're right. They're the correct bearings. Make sure they fit. Make sure they fit on the crankshaft. Then I mark them, and that's what you see the arrow pointing forward, so that I will always remember where the thing is. There, and I dropped this bearing. It was kind of funky how it happened. Anyway, but anyway, it didn't hurt it. So that I'm not pushing hard on the Scotch-Brite. I'm just barely wiping it with it. It looks like I'm pushing really hard, but I'm not, because it's in fast motion. So I put the bearings in there, and then I actually put oil on them, and then I'll put them on the crankshaft. Make sure the little marker is in the correct position. So that's number 4. So the marker, the tangs will be down, and the little, what's that called? The little hump that's on the top of the rod is facing upward. On the last rod I put it on wrong, but I did correct it later. So if you notice that, you're pretty sharp. If you watch the first video and notice that, I did put the number, what was that? Number 2 rod was on upside down, because I'm trying to film, stop. There's a lot of editing going on here, stop clips and then restarting. So trying to figure out camera angle, make sure I'm still in frame and all that stuff, and it gets me very distracted while I'm trying to build an engine. Otherwise, this is pretty easy to me at this point. It's been many years since I have built one, until about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And then I hadn't built one in many years, like 30 years before that. So now I'm kind of on my own, so I can do it. It's not hard to do. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. You watch somebody do it once, then you kind of go, oh yeah, I remember that. Then all of a sudden you're doing it again. So yeah, I've got the engines kind of pretty much down. And again, some of the stuff I'm doing prior to this point, I've checked all the bearings, I've cleaned the crankshaft, I went through and blew it all out, with air, really good, get every orifice. I took brushes, I have really good brushes, and I run them through all the holes with carburetor spray, make sure that there's no remnants in there. Again, I'm checking the gear, it's not quite hot enough. It was kind of maybe a hair of a little tiny burr on the edge where the clip was or something. So anyway, no big deal. Just heated it up a little bit more and got it hot enough. I don't like to get them too hot. I mean, you can get them, I've seen guys get them really hot and they just slide right on. But, some of the guys say, well, it ruins the temper in the gear. I mean, I really don't think it'd be that much to do that, but I wouldn't really. So, but I don't like to get them too hot because of that reason, possibly, but it probably wouldn't matter. So some guys, like I said, they cook them. I mean, they're just steaming when they take them off there. So all the rod caps are on correctly. Everything fit together good. The bolts, if you notice at the end of this, if you notice, I use a hammer to hit them. On the 40 horse rods, because they don't have, rod nuts like on they have rod bolts, and they don't have steel sleeves that they go into like on the chromoly ones. They have steel sleeves. No, I'm not damaging the gear doing that either. I'm hammering down low, not near the teeth. Believe me, you'll ruin the gear doing that. But yeah, and be careful with the brass one. You shouldn't need to hammer that one at all. It didn't need to. It just slid right on. And then if the clip is straight like that, then you're good to go. If it's crooked, then you know that you got one not quite all the way on. You got to pull it back off and recheck it. So, yeah. Make sure, again, this bearing is the correct position. I've got it arrow marked. Like I said, I put it in the case first just to double check. Make sure everything fits. It's kind of a good habit. Going through and torquing the rods. And then at the very end, you'll see me with a hammer and chisel. And what I do is there's a little thing that they did. They would actually peen. There's a little area on the bolts that you peen to keep it from spinning so that it can come back out. So yeah, I always do that on the 40 horse ones. So you can see right here, I'm doing that. There's a little thing, you just knock it so that it, you know, it's kind of like a lock washer kind of thing. So do that. To all the rods. This one went together pretty good. Again, I had to pull the rod off on the last one. You might see it somewhere where I've got it upside down, and I did correct that, of course. And there's another place in the video where I actually, when I put the, trying to think here. When I put the clips on the pistons, I actually did put them all on. It doesn't look like I did. I edited it out. I was actually putting it on, and I was in a little trouble getting it in. Of course, you know, those things can be a real pain. And I just stopped the video and then restarted, and it was already in. So, yeah, that's all done. Everything's correct, put together right. Oil the lifters and make sure that they spin. Make sure they spin freely. We can turn them around. If they don't spin, you will have major cam wear very quickly. Again, make sure the timing mark before you put the case halves together. Make sure the timing mark's in the right place. And wiggle the cam. Make sure you have the proper amount of, see right there, the gear lash. That's about right. It can be any amount of noise is okay. So, you know, and then set this on. You notice it goes all the way on. It does not rock back and forth at all. That tells you that your crankshaft is all the way down. So there was no pinching going on there. And then don't forget to put the other bearing in the other case valve. You'll know right away when you go to crank it over. It will not build oil pressure with that. So again, all the cam things get a little lube. And I did put the cam plug in. Yeah, and this is a 40 horse, so you have to have the correct cam plug for it. Can't just put a 1600 one in there. They're bigger. This is Honda Bond, so you can use. There's a Permatex version of it, but it's for motorcycle case halves. It works the best for engine cases. And if you notice, I'm doing the opposite case half because there's no studs in it. It's much easier to put that stuff on instead of having to go around all the studs. So it's much easier to do that half of the case. And then you kind of pull the rods to the side a little bit. They'll stay in place for about 20 seconds or so. And then hopefully I can get the case on before. And I do. I should have. I got lucky on that. That was taking me way too long. Just missed it on the one rod. You see it start to move. The other one's still in place. But anyway, yeah, I got it together. Torqued it down. And you notice, walk the engine back and front to rear, your end play from end to end, and rotate it. And make sure it does both of those things before you tighten down those six and torque them, and then check that end play and check the crankshaft rotation. Make sure she rotates fairly easy. I mean, sometimes they're a little tighter than others. This one was really good. It just went, I could just tell this one was perfect. And those are Silverline bearings. So Silverline, some of them, there's a batch out there of Silverline bearings right now that will pinch the center main. And it's not your case, and it's not anything else but the actual bearing. There's some faulty ones that got back into circulation because Silverline is no longer. So, but that's kind of cool. I did get Silverline bearings, so they're steel backed. And apparently a lot of the sizes, I don't know what sizes we don't have, but some of the sizes they do have in Male, in steelback. CB Performance is bragged that they have them. So, I don't know. Again, that's all for the night, and we're going to come back the next day, start sandblasting some heads. And while I'm doing that, I'm getting ready to go over to the Georgia shop where we got the valve, where he has the valve grinding equipment. And I didn't unfortunately film using the seat grinder. He has a new seat grinder set up. It's called, what is it called? New something. New Way. And they're basically carbide tips that you do by hand, and it works really good. It works better than the old seat grinder, the big old heavy thing you use. And we did a 3-angle valve job on it, so it's all done nice. And I ground the valves in the valve grinder. Hadn't done that before, so I did it myself. And did all the valves, all German valves that are in it. They still had the Volkswagen labels on them, so that was kind of cool. They were in really good shape. The 40 horse heads that I got for this one were really good. They were not the ones that came on the bucket truck. They were actually better ones I had laying there, so it's kind of cool. We ended up with, I did check the deck height, and we ended up with, I don't know if I showed that in the other part of the video. We did up with 7.9. I had to do some playing around. I actually did use paper gaskets on the bottoms to shim them up just a little bit, because I was like barely at 40, and there were some areas where it might have been a little bit less than 40 on the piston. So I was like, well, I kind of want to shim them up a little bit more, so I took them up 4 thousandths or 3 thousandths of the paper gaskets, and that helped me get to a nice. A 40 is a real tight deck height, so kind of went a little tight because I wanted the compression a little higher for the camshaft that we have in it. So we did put a, this is a, what they call a W100, but it's not. It's pretty low on lift and duration. It's probably like 345 lift, average, and at 1-to-1. I put 111 rockers on it. Instead of 40 horse rockers, I put 1.1s from a 1600. And we have, I think, about 260 to 270 duration. I don't have the exact specs on it, but it's definitely a lot bigger than the stock cam, but not too big where it just won't run. It should run good. Now, if I brought the compressor, I really wanted to bring it up to 8.25, which would have probably made that work a little bit better. But we'll find out where the 7.9 is. Maybe it'll be fine. So when you have a really small intake port, you're not going to get a lot of you're not going to get a lot of performance out of the engine. 40 horse just doesn't. It's just some guy says he gets 70 horse out of one. I'd love to see that in the dyno. I don't even know if you could, but even with dual carbs, because you just don't have enough air going through the little port to get air and fuel to get in there to actually burn it. And if you ran up to 8, he runs I think 8.6, which is a lot. See, the thing is, if you run too much compression for the air and fuel, your engine's going to run hot, you guys. So you got to have the proper amount of compression for the air and fuel. If you run it with too much air and fuel for the compression, it'll run a little cool. If you do it the opposite and you make it a little bit too little for the, like if you don't have as much air and fuel in there and you've got a lot of compression, it can run too hot. So those are things that you need to watch out for when you build these things. You got to kind of know what's going on. So yeah, this should be a good combination. We'll find out when it gets in the car, coming in the next, probably in the next video, or not in the next video, but Maybe we'll do a will it run first. Check in the gap, and you know, it ended up being okay. Everything ended up being okay there. I'm considering going 125 in the rockers if we needed to. I might take it apart and do. All right, so the long block is done. I just got to do the oil pressure relief valve, and a couple other things. This has I'm going to say a small cheater cam in it. It's about what it is. It's not real big, but a lot more than the stock one. And you know, you've only got ports this size, guys. You're only going to get so much air and fuel through there. Having more duration is going to help get it through there. Open a little bit longer. A little bit of lift might help more if I got a little more lift on it. But anyway, the bottom end's all together. And we'll just run with this. See how the car runs. And then maybe, you know, I'll try some 125 rockers on here just to see if that helps a little bit more, because it is performance increased duration cam, probably like around 260 duration. So that'll be a lot more than the stock was, like 226 or something like that. It's a really short duration that they had on them. So, and we did port the heads. I did just clean up the exhaust port. As I always tell you guys, right there where it makes a hard corner on the exhaust port, just clean that up a little bit. Makes it flow a lot better. So it'll help it poop a little bit better, but we can't get but so much air through there. You can try and open that up, but you're going to be right into the gasket. There's nowhere to go, and the little tiny intake going all the way up, not going to help much. Some guys, I've seen a guy said he got 70 horsepower to one of these. I'd like to see that. By putting dual carbs on it, you still got that little tiny intake, man. You know, you're just not going to get enough air and fuel. I mean, I have a bug spray. We could put on one of these. A bug spray. It's a 2-barrel. Kind of has longer intake runner, so that would give you torque, right? Longer intake runner. And then it has like a 2-barrel with 2 separate right and left to it. I've tried that before on a 40, big bore 40, and it didn't do anything. Gave me no more power. The only way it would work is if I really increase the compression ratio like to 8. We're at 7.9 right now. So anyway, if you want to watch the narration video, I'll go through and tell you what I'm doing as I'm doing it. But this one here, we're just going to run this the way that it is. Hopefully it works. And some people want to see just the engine getting built, and they don't want to hear any talking. So anyway, hopefully that works out. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.